What is going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to a very, very special episode of Opposition Views. I'm here with the man, Jonathan Brown. Thank you so much for
Swoop.
having me, mate.
Good to have you, mate. You going well, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm a bit nervous. I have been since I walked into your house.
I thought, who's this bogan walking down the street? Collingwood supporter, and he walked in. He said, "I'm Swoop Luke." It's a pleasure, mate. Pleasure.
No, thank you, mate. Look, we had a good chat, sort of off camera about I went to preview this Collingwood Brisbane game, and a few months ago when this sort of game gets sort of put onto the fixture, you go, "Oh, awesome! Grand final rematch, 4 matches in, can't wait for it. It's going to be huge, and it's going to be huge for another reason. We're both winless at the moment."
Yeah, both win. It's unbelievable. The two grand finalists, one of the great grand finals of all time, wasn't it? And these Easter Thursday games at the Gabba, that's what we live for as Lions players, because it was our marquee matchup, and Collingwood supporting get marquee matchups every week. But we really lifted for it, and it was sensational. I remember back, it might have been 2002, 2003. I'd missed most of the pre-season, and Lee wanted me to play a practice game. And the only game was 5 days before we played the Easter Thursday game.
Right.
Played against Morningside in the QAFL, local Queensland. But the Morningside seniors had a bye, so I played against Morningside's reserves on the Sunday afternoon before Easter Thursday, and did not get a kick. Halfway through the second quarter, Lee took me off. I thought, he's not going to play me Easter Thursday. No. 5 days later, I'm playing in front of a packed house at the Gabba, Easter Thursday against the Mighty Pies. But fortunate enough, I went all right that night because the adrenaline just gets you up and gets you going, and such a big game. So hopefully plenty of Collingwood supporters will travel up there. Not too many, but it's a big thing, especially for Brisbane Lions supporters.
Yeah, it's going to be, like I said, like a huge game, and it is a marquee game. Last year's game was really good as well. That was one that we lost as well. It's the Gabba, it's the Fortress.
Yeah.
Brisbane have just got a great record up there. I know their record this year hasn't been that good. Got knocked off by Carlton by a point, even though you were 40 or something points up. How do you sort of see Brisbane? They came off the bye. Yeah. How do you see them coming into this game now, knowing that maybe not the season's super on the line, but they need a win?
Yeah, it's a good time for Brisbane to come off the bye. It certainly helps. But Collingwood's had a really tough draw, and I know a lot of criticism has been thrown at Collingwood and us pundits in the media. We look closely, but the fact is 6-day breaks, travel early in the season against GWS, and probably played, certainly GWS and Sydney would be the premiership favourites, and St Kilda, the way they're playing, they've been good, so strong opposition. And then another travel back to the Gabba. So that's a pretty challenging start. So definitely advantage Brisbane from a preparation point of view. There's no question about that. And Lachie Neale comes back into the side. So they'll certainly be improved from what they served up against Fremantle.
Yeah. And on the sort of flip side, Collingwood, you touched on them, 0-3 at the moment. Yeah. How do you, as a Brisbane player supporter, how do you kind of see that challenge? Like, backs against the wall, we're going to go interstate. We tend to travel well. Yeah, you do. Not up at the Gabba, but we tend to travel well. How do you sort of prepare for that? Because it's an anomaly at the moment, Collingwood side.
I think it's probably coming a good time, to be honest, even though it's not ideal from preparation point of view. I think what it does quite often, you got your backs to the wall and your chance to get away from all the distractions. It galvanised the group. I think Collingwood have shown that in the past. It's that us against them mentality. So it could actually help them, beyond who the opponent is and all that. And obviously the Gabba can be challenging, especially a really fast deck early in the year. I think it actually helps them. It helps them to a degree. So, with the local knowledge of Craig McRae and Justin Lepage, two of the Lions greats, obviously that helps. They know the Gabba really well, and obviously can impart that knowledge on the boys.
Yeah, and talking about McRae and Lepo, like obviously you guys won 3 premierships and you backed it up with a 4th. Trying to going down to Port Adelaide.
2 of my favourite teammates. Yeah, they're just great. They're great blokes. They're great fun. They've obviously had a great time at Collingwood, and I'm sure the Collingwood faithful loves them now. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and I love what they've done. It's almost like you've sort of jumped on the Collingwood bandwagon a little bit, because I want my mates to go well, but just the way they've been able to get the boys playing some good footy has been great to see.
And we absolutely love them. And they look like like the nicest dude. So I talk to, when I'm at training sometimes, he'll come up and say hi, and he's just the nicest dude. And you obviously experienced that. But I want to talk about, being able to, you played in 4 premierships straight, 4 grand finals straight. The hunger, the intensity, going from the hunter to the hunted. What's that kind of like? Because that's what we're experiencing at the moment. Everyone said Pies back to back. It's their sort of to lose almost, and it just looks like the intensity and the hunger is just out.
Yeah, and it's really hard to measure, isn't it? But you just see it with your eyes. So they're intangibles. It's just that you can, and it's just small percentages. You're a little bit off with your defensive effort, and you're not running in an organised manner. A little bit off when it comes time to run and spread from the contest defensively, and just the want to get from contest to contest. The want to dig in and apply massive pressure to the opposition. So just little things, and it is really hard to measure. And it's difficult. You are the hunted, but I always think Collingwood's hunted every year because everyone wants to play against Collingwood in front of the big crowd. So you guys are conditioned to it more than any other club in the competition. But there is some signs. There is some signs that there is just that ability to. And I always reluctant to question blokes on their hunger because blokes are going out there and trying their hardest. No doubt about that. But that real want to dig in when you really have to, is that there every single time, 100% of the time? Not sure it is at the moment, and you just have to question that. And that's been a problem now. Is that because guys are, enjoyed the premiership or just sitting back and just hopefully it'll all happen and they're not willing to pay the price as much as they were last year? It's hard to quantify, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It is really hard to quantify. How much that to do is with, got veterans at the wrong side of their peak. And all of a sudden they're starting to slow down. The game's getting a little bit harder for them. And they got to the top of the mountain last year. So, that's a really challenging thing. Because I think people forget that Collingwood hasn't just entered the premiership window.
Exactly.
They've been up for quite a few years. Like 2018 played in the grand final and almost won that. So this group's been up for 5 or 6 years. Been in that window. 21 clearly was an aberration. So, you're not a young side that's got young, hungry players that are just into the prime of their career. That's, that's not the list demographic. So that's when you start to think, oh, geez, they're sort of getting into dangerous territory.
And you talk about, the young guys sort of coming through it, and we talked about this off camera a little bit with who we kind of have coming through as a little bit of depth. Does that help or hinder the older players where they're like, if I don't perform now and we're not going to, let's just say Collingwood lose to Brisbane, we're not going to make finals. Does that help or hinder the older players to go, okay, if I'm still sidelined and I'm not doing my role, I know Ed Allen or maybe a Carmichael is going to come in for me, so I have to perform.
Selection pressure, I think, would help that. But it's hard to build selection pressure when you've been at the top, because you don't have as good a draft picks, and so you don't have the depth. Not many sides that have been up the top for a few years really have the depth coming through. It's quite a challenging thing to do, and I think Collingwood's in that same boat. So it's hard to tell, isn't it? It's hard to tell the younger blokes what you've got coming through. Clearly, we know obviously Nick Dacos, he's going to be one of the all-time greats, but. I mean, Nick Dacos are not growing on trees.
No.
And the other thing is too, when the boys are at the top, when your team's going well, it's hard to blood these youngsters. It's hard to get games in them. Majority of the youngsters, outside of Nick Dacos, they take 50 to 100 games 100%. To establish themselves as good AFL players. And we saw it. I've lived it at Brisbane. We saw it. Brisbane with stars. The names are still on the magnets. But then they drop off, tip over the other side of the peak of their career. And you can't replace them with stars as well for whatever reason, where they haven't had the high draft picks, haven't had the development. So it just happens.
And that's what also we were talking about. Like, Brisbane were just absolutely star-studded, and you sort of touched on like Pendlebury, like Mitchell and stuff, where all of a sudden, even if the hunger is still there, time doesn't sort of stand still anymore for these older players, and you experienced it.
Absolutely, and you just see, like I've got the ultimate respect for guys like Sidey and Pendles especially, who won a premiership younger, and then they've been able to get to the top of the mountain again younger. That must be just an unbelievable, satisfying feeling, because I think there's no question you would appreciate it when you're older, when you've had the nicks and you've realised how bloody hard it is to get there. But there's some challenges for those boys, you know, and for Howie and Mitch that, you know, he's the game quickening up on them, you know, and you start to make some mistakes. And then the doubts start to creep in. That's challenging when you're sort of well into your 30s. What happens when you're 25? You just go, I'm just through a bad slump and I'll fight my way through it. So, yeah, that's a bit of a challenge for them.
And you talked about, and you just mentioned like fumbling, and we talked about the pressure that, you know, before when we were having a chat, I was saying that Collingwood last season, even though we were winning close games and we might have lost those games, you could see that signature Collingwood, the McRae, you know, what he wanted to do. Now it's just not there anymore, and it could be system, it could be, like we said, Nathan Murphy coming out, McStay coming out.
Well, Murphy's a big loss, isn't he?
He is. It's huge.
You know, he's knocked himself out more times than I have.
Huge.
Hopefully he's all right, and hopefully he can get back soon. But
we miss him.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And like I said, Moore's trying to play a Murphy and a Darcy Moore role at the moment, and it's just not working.
He's in betweener, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he looks like now he's in between contests.
Yeah.
Like he's just not. He's a step short here and there. And the other underrated thing is too, like I was a captain for I think 7 years, and it's bloody hard to be a good captain when you're struggling yourself.
Yeah.
Your own performance is struggling. It's bloody hard to do it because you start internalising, you start thinking about your own performance, especially if you're trying to make up for a lost position in Nathan Murphy. You know, and so it's hard to be outside of yourself, you know what I mean, and, you know, pointing and directing and be that fun-loving guy and helping other guys do their role. Because you start thinking, shit, I better look after my own backyard first, get myself sorted. So that's incredibly challenging for Darcy Moore, you know, over the next few weeks, no question, and obviously Thursday night as well.
Yeah, Thursday night is just going to be, it's a barometer, the game on Thursday night. What do you, is it quick, like Braden Maynard, Craig McRae, they say it's, we'll flick the switch, we'll get back to work, we'll flick the switch. Is it surely can't be as simple as just going, we're in.
Yeah, it's really hard. Well, it's hard to judge against other teams. You don't know how hard they're working.
Yeah.
And it is hard to flick the switch. And I'm not a big stat man, but I mean, turnover numbers are huge in our game.
Yep.
So that's usually an indicator how well your system's working. Collingwood have been horrible the first 3 weeks. Granted, good opposition, no question about it, but they're trending similar to what Geelong were at the start of last year. We know how well that ended up for Geelong. So they've got to sort that out. And hopefully that can click into gear. Yeah, I'm always interested in the language because it's hard to go back to back, you know. And Lee Matthews, we were so fortunate. We had a great teacher, and we learned from Lee Matthews about always going on to the next challenge. When you start hearing language about we'll get back to it, we'll get back to it, it's not far away and all that. When you start thinking of trying to get back to something, what you're referring in the subconscious, you're referring back to success. You're referring back to 2023. This is a new campaign. It's a new season. People have gone to work on you. People have improved over the off-season. So you just got to be dangerous about rolling that language. You've got to be careful about rolling that language out because it can infect your psyche. Yeah. And people don't mean to do it. It's a natural thing because you're trying to convince yourself. Yeah, exactly. You're not just trying to convince the public. You're trying to convince yourself, aren't you? Oh, no, he'll be right. We'll be right. Yeah. You know, and you get backs against the wall. So it's easier said than done, though.
100%. And you know McRae and Lepper really well, and you'd know that they'd be, you know, I don't know them, but you'd know that they'd be working their asses off to fix it, right?
Exactly. Well, you got good men in charge to be able to go back to back because those boys have lived it. They know what it takes. So they would obviously be able to help impart that knowledge on the current group. Yep. Because it's a bloody tremendously difficult thing to do. Like you said, you've got the target on your back. You're a big club anyway. Yep. Everyone wants to play against you and knock you off. Yep. And teams have gone to work on you in the off-season. Like Ross Lyon summed it up in the post-game. He said, you know, teams have gone to work on them. You know, teams have worked Collingwood out. Have they worked him out? I'm not sure, but it certainly looks as if teams are putting some strategies in place. To go, he's a good example. They're putting a shitload of work into Geordie to go, aren't they? Like, he's a gun.
He hasn't been the player that he was.
Exactly.
And that was only 4 games ago.
That's right. He's had an ordinary start to the year. But clearly teams are putting a bit more focus on him at the start of the year. So we saw that from the very start when Canelio went head-to-head against him, Seb Ross on the weekend. So, you know, they're just those sort of things that add up. Yeah,
it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time to be a Collingwood supporter. Like,
and I'm not saying, like, hey, I've been part of a team that were premiership favourites in 2005, start of the year. And we, in our last game of that season, we lost by 22 goals against St Kilda. And Stevie Milne kicked 12 goals and we missed the final.
Oh, my God.
So things can happen quick.
Yeah.
And by no stretch of imagination am I saying this is going to happen to Collingwood.
Yeah, of course.
But I've lived it, and I've been part of
Yeah.
a team where I was part of that. Where you go, oh no, and we'll be right. We'll get back. We'll get back. And you get onto that slippery slope, and you got to get off it real quick.
Yeah.
So
otherwise you snowball, don't you?
yeah, that's right. So the Pies need to get off it on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Hopefully not for my sake. I'm a Lions supporter, but they've got to get off that bloody slippery slope real quick.
And so just on Thursday night, before I let you go, your predictions, your winning margin, your winner.
Actually, look, I think Brisbane, on the back of the break they've had, and Collingwood's had a tough preparation, and the Gabba, they're a different proposition there, 100%. And they've had a good record against Collingwood up until the grand final. I think Brisbane will win.
Yep.
It's always pretty close, though.
Is,
I'll say, 15 points.
Yeah.
Not locking Neil back. He's a key player.
And I think Duday. I think he because I think Gardner and McKenna are out as well.
Yeah.
So Duday play.
Yeah, he's a chance. But I wouldn't be surprised if Collingwood went up there and they would bounce back and knock off Brisbane, because Kadeem Coleman's a huge out for Brisbane.
Oh, 100%.
He's their quarterback,
Yep.
their architect of all their ball movement. And obviously the galvanising effect of jumping on the road and travelling together for Collingwood, I think that helps. So I'll go for Brisbane, but I don't think it's going to be much.
Yeah, it's going to be an insane game. JB, thank you so much, mate. I really bloody appreciate it.
Swoop, Luke. One of me greats. You'll help me do my couch homework before Monday.
Tell the camera where we can find you as well.
Absolutely. Swoop Luke was our special guest on Brownie's podcast today that I do with Campbell Brown. I was a little bit short on knowledge, so we got Swoop Luke on, and we'll just put the run sheet together for On the Couch tonight. But Brownie's podcast, tune in. You can check it on Instagram as well, or wherever you get your podcast, twice a week, Mondays and Fridays.
And links are all down below. JB, thank you so much, mate. I appreciate it.
Are they your real teeth?
Yeah, they're